had to say it, there are a lot of people in the world putting out that order as we speak. So it's alarmingly relevant, particularly in Ukraine, one might think.
Are you ready?
How long does it take you to put on the show makeup?
Half of my life. It was, the first time, it was 4 hours, yeah. And I was in the hands of the best people. Nick Dugman was the guy who did my face every day in Return of the Jedi. He went on to great things, continues to do so. He did all the Harry Potter work, all of those great creatures, faces and so on, went to Nick's work. And he was well, not exactly an apprentice in those days, but he was a young guy, but clearly with great talent. And I said, what can I, sitting there in a chair, what can I do to help? He said, you could fall asleep. So I managed that, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning. He just wanted my face to be still, so that he could work his magic. And then when we went to Australia for Revenge of the Sith, different team, very good team, Dave Elsey, yeah. And George wanted me to be able to be the horrific man in the morning and maybe, the Chancellor in the afternoon. So he wanted something much faster than 4 hours. So they devised a kind of balaclava that I put on over my head and my neck. It was fine, but it wasn't as good as Nick's stuff because it couldn't be as detailed, But it was also all right because in that film, as you'll remember, he was sort of in transition, and he was particularly hideous before it settled down, and as a result of Sam Jackson, I don't know, Daisy Ridley, Sam Jackson, what have they got against me? Anyway, Sam ruined my face, with the help of Hayden, of course, doing his best. So that's a long way of answering your question. Hello?
Hello, sir. First of all, thank you for doing these. We just love it. You're
Good to be
fantastic.
here.
Just wondering of the Emperor's powers. You eventually used the lightsaber in the earlier prequels and that sort of thing. What is your favorite power and that sort of thing, and how did you enjoy the lightsaber training and that sort of thing?
Well, I was very surprised when I read the script, 2 hours before we did the shoot, to discover that I did have a lightsaber and I was going to wield it because I imagined all my power was coming out of my fingers. I thought that's, who needs a lightsaber when you've got electric lightning? But of course, he was moving out from the very angry senator, chancellor, into the monster himself. So yeah, there were fight sessions and I did a bit of training. With Nick Gillard, who's a wonderful fight director, who was very understanding of someone who's not naturally a swordsman, unlike Hayden and Ewan, who are just brilliant at it, amazingly good. I did a bit of that, but most of the work was done by my stunt double, who was fantastic. And unlike a lot of stunt doubles, actually looked like me. So that was a relief. He was going to do most of the work, but then I did have to do the close-ups, obviously, all of that to make it look entirely convincing. So I got a bit of action, and that was fun, and it was good to do. And I'm afraid I did hit Sam Jackson a couple of times. He was very understanding, but I think that's why he wanted to destroy me.
Then you knocked him out of a window.
I did do that, yes. Yes, I was perhaps a little cruel, but he obviously hadn't signed up for any more movies at the time, and it was all right. He was immediately hospitalized and recovered very quickly.
Dave, where are you at?
Hi, Ian. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I have a question for you, just as an actor. Over the course of the 3 eras of films that you were part of, do you have a favorite memory, whether it's a scene that you shot or a day on set that was very special or enjoyable or just sticks out to you over your course with the franchise?
I do. I can go straight to it. The scene I enjoyed most, and it's the one in which I had most to say, it was, I think, probably the longest dialogue season in any of the movies, and that's in Revenge of the Sith, the scene in the Opera House, where I finally managed to get him to confirm that he's going to join the dark side. And that was originally going to be shot in an even more elaborate office. The interesting thing about offices was, you know, a lot of people didn't get much of a set, you know, as the green screens. I always got an enormous set with an enormous office. I imagined they'd sort of fix it later, but no. George said, no, that's how power works. Every time you get more powerful, you get a bigger office. That's how we're going to show it. But then when we got to do that scene, the one I just referred to, he said, I don't, you know, we've had the office scenes. I think we need to shift the location a little bit. And as you know, you like the theatre and you're a theatre actor, I thought, well, maybe they could be chatting in a theatre, in a box, you know, the imperial box. Well, not imperial yet, but, you know, quite important box. And I thought that was a brilliant idea because it meant I could talk to him like that, but also look out there, pretending really I was looking at the show while having the kind of thoughts that you probably, you know, imagined he was having. Apparently we were watching a squid ballet.
It's called Squid Lake, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, exactly, yes. Book early to avoid disappointment. And we played that scene, and it was very well written, that scene, so it was great fun to do. And it happened on a day, excuse me, I'm just going to clear my throat. I needed to do that, but also I really needed to do that on the day, because we'd done, I think it was the fight scene with Sam, and so I'd had a busy day, and I don't know if you know wind machines in movies, but they're not little things underneath. They're driven by men, and there are about 4 of them powered towards us during that scene to make, you know, the cloaks flow and the hair stand on end. All of which is good, but there seemed to be quite a lot of dust in the Fox Studios in Australia, and about half of it went down my throat. So it was a Friday afternoon, end of the day. I said, George, are we really going to do it now? He said, yes, we'll do it now, you know, and if, you know, if we can get it better, we'll do it. If we need to get it better, we'll do it on Monday. So I said, all right. And we didn't even have time to run through the dialogue. Hayden and I, he'd been busy doing stuff elsewhere. And I said, well, I'm a bit worried about the voice. It might not sound, you know, what we'd all like it to be. And he said, well, we'll try it anyway. And then when we did the first little rehearsal, and Ian, the voice is great. It sounds as if he's in transition. I thought, okay, from, you know, from, as it were, the Chancellor to the monster. So I stopped worrying about it then, but and now you're all going to go back and switch and look at the scene. But there is, and they treated it a bit, but every time I've watched it, which isn't, you know, that often recently, I'm conscious of the fact that half of the studio dust is still down my throat. So it was a kind of nerve-wracking day, but it was also a great day. And wonderful working with Hayden anyway, and his concentration was always absolute. And since it was Friday, we didn't have time to do the reverse. In other words, all the shots were on me, he was there. And on Monday, all the shots were on him. And I also, the reason that sticks in my mind as a memory, is people say, hey, you know, are there any redeeming features? Is there anything at all that's good about the Emperor? And I said, well, yeah, he loves going to the theatre.
Amongst the arts.
Yeah.
You called the Emperor the monster, but I remember one time in an article, right when about Rise of Skywalker came out, you said you played it as if the Senator Palpatine was the costume and the real person is what you just called the monster.
That's true. The great George said one day when we were doing Phantom Menace, he said, now the thing about Senator Palpatine, I mean, we know what's underneath. Well, you know, eventually people do in the movies, but our discussion, his and mine, tells us what's underneath. But if you thought of your face, Ian's face, the Senator's face, as a mask, and that your eyes, Ian's eyes, the Senator's eyes, were in fact unreal, were contact lenses, or, you know, sort of whatever they end up being as the Emperor, that might give you a way in. And it was completely fascinating to be told that. You wouldn't notice anything, and I didn't have to do anything. If I'd done things, it would have been, you know, artificial. But it's wonderful to think of your own face and your own eyes as a mask, and behind that, underneath it, is something else. something, in this case, as monstrous. There was a sort of Yoda dummy, not very helpful. You know, we spent time making that because no one's going to see it. That I would dress myself to. And then on the fight, of course, he wasn't anywhere to be seen. So I had to do a lot of jumping around and hissing and laughing and all sorts of things. That was a hysterical day. George said, we got about half an hour, just give us what you've got. So I did. And tried to keep a straight face, where a straight face was appropriate. So that was my relationship with Yoda. But my relationship with Frank Oz is very good. He's a great guy, and of course I worked with him before when he directed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and that was enormous fun. And Frank is enormous fun, apart from being a kind of genius. And they were going to have two. There was going to be one where I would be on my knees for the close-ups. But I thought that was going to do terrible things to my back, so we scrapped that. And I was standing upright and held in by, every possible kind of safety device, and manipulated by four guys who were great. And they said, Ian, no, they were London, they didn't have an American accent. Ian, when you move, we'll give you a heads up. Okay. I said, yeah, I'd be grateful, thank you. And they would always give me a heads up, but it was usually the second after they'd taken off. So we're going to go now. Yeah, go. Thank you. And I like flying around the studio. I've always wanted to fly, and it was great fun. And Daisy was worried more about me than I was worried about myself, And she said, oh God, I think I'm going to have a heart attack if they do that to you again. I said, no, I'll be the one having the heart attack. Have you read the script? Anyway, it's around somewhere, and maybe someday they'll release it. But in the script that we filmed 3 years ago now, is it? Yeah. I revealed the fact to Adam, to Kylo, that Daisy Ridley was my granddaughter. And in the movie, for reasons of speed, really, it was, Kylo already knew and told her. He did, I think. But it was, when I read it, I thought, this is, I went, what? To myself, this is a great moment of revelation. And as a character, I liked having it, and as the actor, I liked having it too. But the great frisson was in the studio when we did it, because, I'm the only person who has, apart from, JJ and a few other need-to-know people, the person who has the script. I mean, the people in the studio, there's at least 200 people, probably more, surrounding you. They don't get a script, they get to see what's happening on the day, but not in advance. So they didn't know I wasn't dead. And when my voice first came through, and there was a lot of this, and it was cut back to the movie, when Kylo comes through to find me in Exegol, he wanders along for a bit, and my voice is the first thing that he hears, sort of tantalizing him. And my voice was just like this. They gave me a mic, and they said, it's a God mic. In other words, the whole of the studio would hear my lines. And they didn't know that I was going to be there. So on the first take, there was a lot of suppressed, oh my God. You could just, oh my God, And that was great. And so when it came to the moment of revelation that she was indeed my granddaughter, the oh my gods were sort of unrestrained, really. And I think, I just know, Adam must have known. Yes, I think he did. He had his script, so it was clear then. But it was good to do, good to reveal. But that's show business, and it exists someday. So you'll maybe see it as an extra on. We don't do DVDs anymore, but an extra somewhere. Yeah.